Being a few minutes behind here, but we'll go ahead and get rolling. Mr. Secretary, call roll.
Senator Carroll. Senator Caslin. Senator Douglas.
Here.
Senator Givens. Here. Senator Kerr. Senator McGarvey. Senator Meredith. Here. Senator Nemes. Present. Senator Webb. Senator West.
Present.
Chairman McDaniel.
Present. Very well. We have a quorum duly constituted to do business. Two quick little administrative items. First of all, need to recognize and welcome our new member to the Appropriations and Revenue Committee, Dr. Douglas. So welcome, sir. Appreciate having you on board.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
And also new to our A&R staff is Ashton Thompson. Ashton, welcome aboard. Glad to have you here. It'll be an exciting session. So very well. Okay, first up, Senate Bill 5, sponsored, I believe, by Senator Howe. If you want to come up, sir, and I think we have a number of distinguished guests who are looking to address the committee today. So I know that you and the gentleman sitting behind you have been working diligently for quite some time on this and are very passionate about it. So please proceed.
Thank you, Jason House, Senate District 1. I'm here to talk on Senate Bill 5, along with all my friends that had districts that were affected by this. Senate Bill 5 establishes the West Kentucky State Aid Funding for Emergencies, or West Kentucky SAFE Fund, in response to the December tornadoes. This fund allocates $200 million of general fund funding for tornado relief efforts to provide financial assistance in areas of need. It immediately appropriates $15 million for temporary housing and then $30 million to help school districts that were affected by this. Eligible recipients are cities, counties, public utilities, etc. in these affected areas, and the affected areas are defined by the Presidential Emergency Declaration through FEMA. This fund allows the receipt of funds from multiple sources, state allocations, federal funding, other gifts from private organizations, all channeled through there. It's designed to be a passive fund in that it doesn't go out and actively solicit or advertise for contributions. It just funnels those funds through to their appropriate need. It's designed as a supplemental fund so that we can target areas of need quickly. If the recipients of those dollars end up being reimbursed by federal aid or other types of aid, then that recipient then refunds this money back into the fund. And it directs the Division of Emergency Management to set up the administrative regs. With that, I'll entertain any questions and
very well.
let anybody else address
Senator
it that
Mills
wants to
come
talk
up next,
about it.
if he doesn't mind. Senator, you have something which I do not particularly care for, but you know, the most powerful word in Frankfurt, but it's probably very necessary in this case. So why don't you talk about that briefly?
It is. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Robbie Mills. I represent Senate District 4 in Western Kentucky. Through reviewing this bill, page 3 at the bottom, line 5, there's a line item that talks about, it says, assistance to utilities serving Graves and Hopkins County for resilience response and future risk reduction through burying of utility wires. I represent Caldwell County, and Princeton Utilities and Water both had almost $3 million worth of damages to their utility systems. That is Caldwell County. And then also Bremen, which is in Muhlenberg County, also had substantial utility damage. So if we're going to list Graves and Hopkins County, I would ask that we also include Caldwell and Muhlenberg counties. So all the communities that had major utility damage will be able to build back with resilience underground utilities if possible.
So, Senator, first of all, we got a couple of technical things that we need to do here. First of all, in all the members' packet is a committee substitute that I believe had been distributed prior. At this time, the chair will entertain a motion to adopt the committee substitute. Senator Caslin, second by Senator Nemes. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Ayes have it. The committee substitute is adopted. At this time, I believe what Senator Mills is referring to is if you look on page 3, Section 5, he would like a voice amendment which in essence would then read assistance to utilities serving Graves, comma, Caldwell, comma, and Hopkins counties. And please do not debate me on the use of the Oxford comma, Senator West.
And also Muhlenberg, which is where Bremen is at.
Caldwell and Muhlenberg, I apologize. It slipped me. All right.
Thank you.
At this time, and as a one-time thing, so if you lobby, if you watch this committee, if you think this committee is interesting, don't expect this to happen again. The chair will entertain a motion from Senator West, seconded by Senator Caslin, to add Caldwell and Muhlenberg counties to page 3, line 25. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. The ayes have it. Very well.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Next up, I would like to invite a guy who, if you want to talk about somebody that's a warrior, that doesn't quit fighting for his constituents and in any scenario, I want Senator Embry to come on up. And I'm not going to elaborate more than that, CB, but to say that you absolutely are and everybody knows it. So please proceed, sir.
I'm C.B. Embry, the state senator for the 6th district, and we were hit very hard in the tornado. I have Hopkins, Muhlenberg, Ohio, and Butler. Butler had very minimal damage. I'd like to talk about our responders, and emergency responders did a great job. Due to my health, I wasn't able to be on the ground, but talking to them over the phone, the EMTs, the fire departments, the police, all did great jobs responding immediately. As soon as I got on the phone, most of them were already on the ground working hard, and it was a very difficult job. I think I lost 28 people in the storm, Bremen and Dawson Springs being the two hardest hit. The Dawson Springs school was only slightly damaged, mostly to the roof, and they were able to use that for a shelter for people who had lost their homes. And the superintendent tells me he hopes that they will be in their school next Tuesday again. But that's a small independent school district, and of course this is a great financial burden on them. Our emergency responders did a tremendous job as they went out. Many homes, businesses were just a rubble. And of course they had to find people who were injured under all that rubble. Of course they found 28 people who had lost their lives, including a district judge. A very terrible job to have to deal with. Some of them lost their own homes, and their own families were affected. And these families will be affected from now on. It will never be exactly like it was. Eventually we will get things back to something like normal, but it'll never be the same again. So this bill, which I'm proud to co-sponsor, will help with the financing of this recovery. I think it's probably the worst tornado outbreak that we have had in our Commonwealth, and I would certainly urge the members to support this bill.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Givens.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, and sorry to interrupt you like that. I wanted to ask a question of Senator Embry before he left the table, if I could, and more of a comment than a question, but still a chance for him to reflect some. Senator Embry, in many, many ways, you represent a unique combination of life experiences and skill sets as you come to this table to talk about this legislation. Having been a former county judge, as you were, being so passionate representing your district, knowing what resilience and what perseverance looks like, because you epitomize that so well every day for all of us. Speak about what it would be like to be a county judge in a county that's been decimated like this, and how county judges respond under these sorts of circumstances.
It would just be devastating when you lose the majority of a community. These are historic communities. They're small towns, but they're historic communities. And when you lose 28 citizens, you lose vast areas in a city, not only business, but more importantly, the residents. It's just devastating. And I have talked with some of the judge executives. They are very appreciative of the response from people who came to their assistance with food, water, clothing. Shelter was, very difficult because many of the places where they would be sheltered were destroyed as well. So, as a judge executive, of course, I was a mayor also before I was a judge executive. So, dealing with such devastation in these towns would just be heartbreaking for them.
Thank you. Senator, stay there one more quick second. I believe you told me at one point in time you were the youngest judge in the history of Ohio County, right?
That's still true, yes.
What was it like working with General Grant back at... No, I'm kidding. But
he smoked too many cigars.
I want to say, because you don't get in front of this committee much, I'm guessing you probably won't be back this session in front of here, but being the last session, so as a point of personal privilege, you are amazing. Your devotion to duty and your willingness to serve through whatever adversity brings with joy and with a smile. The people of Ohio County, the people of the 6th Senate District, the people you've represented, they simply can't appreciate what a gem they've got. And you are a hero and a role model to a lot of us. And we sincerely appreciate everything you're continuing to do. So thank you, sir. We do appreciate it.
Thank you for those very kind remarks.
And to his point directly, congratulations to the superintendent of Dawson Springs. I was listening to something the other day about disaster recovery, and when Joplin was hit about a decade ago or so, they said the thing that kind of brought everybody together is the superintendent said, we're opening in August. And he kind of laid a marker down for normalcy in the community. And so congratulations to the superintendent of Dawson Springs for doing the same thing. All right, gentlemen, at this point, I'll quit being so bossy for a few minutes and let you decide who's next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll slide back up here. The day after the tornado, I just want to give a little bit of commentary just so you understand the devastation that was there. The day after the tornado, I just went for a ride to see what happened, and went to Princeton and drove through what used to be the country club, and there was $300,000 houses just gone. And, it wasn't like there was rubble on the ground. It was just gone. And the debris that was in the neighborhoods were from, blocks and miles away. And it was just very evident that the tornado stayed on the ground for, miles at a time and just wiped out everything that was in its path. Drove down to Dawson Springs, and Dawson Springs is a humble former coal mining town. A lot of $50,000 and $60,000 homes that were generational homes that were passed down from generation to generation, just gone. And some of the struggles that community is having is, they were probably no insurance or underinsured homes, and folks just don't have a place to go. So one of the things in Senate Bill 5 that it provides is some temporary housing. And there's $15 million in this bill for immediate addressing of temporary housing. And that is, what may be generally referred to as kind of FEMA mobile homes or trailers. And with that, we'll be able to purchase probably 200 or a little bit more mobile homes. also be able to hook them up with utilities and the infrastructure that's needed to kind of get those folks back to have a place they call their own and home. They've got a lot of decisions to make. They've got a lot of hoops to jump through with insurance coverage and other assistance, and they just need a place to land. And right now, a lot of them are couch surfing in places that with relatives or just friends or out of the county. And what these temporary homes will do is get them back in the county, get them close to their places of employment, and get the kids back into the county so that they can continue their education. So I'm particularly pleased with that. That's the main thing that I see folks needing right now is just a place they call their own and home. And so this bill's going to, make that happen in a quick manner, and then also address longer term needs in the housing realm. So thank you so much. This is a long road to hoe. You mentioned Joplin. I mean, very similar. You're looking at a 2 or 3 year rebuilding process before things get back to normal. And this bill is going to help fill the gaps that our citizens will need. So thank you so much from someone who represents a couple of communities that were just devastated. So thank you.
Very well. Gentlemen, anybody else wanting to speak on this, or are you just here to be supportive? Open it up.
Thank you,
A
Mr.
good lawyer
Chairman.
Always takes his chance, doesn't he?
That's right. And I had to be encouraged by another lawyer. Mr. Chairman, Whitney Westerfield, 3rd Senate District, thanks for letting me speak for a moment. So this bill, which I'm very thankful for, and I appreciate Senator Howell sponsoring that, and I appreciate the West Kentucky delegation of the Senate being unified in the support of this bill. One of the things that this bill doesn't specifically or immediately appropriate funds for, but this committee is going to need to address in this year's budget and in budgets down the road, and that's the court system. As the Judiciary Chair, it was very important to me, and I was there too, first thing Saturday morning. I've been able to share, because of the other part-time job that I have, flying a drone from time to time, I was able to share the story of Kentucky in Mayfield and in Dawson Springs, truly with viewers all over the world, from Australia to Great Britain. I had a request for the footage in Singapore. I mean, just people all over the world were watching, and one of the biggest things and the most jaw-dropping things that I saw with my own eyes was the courthouse there in downtown Mayfield, which is a complete loss. 3 semi-truck loads worth of files are now sitting in Detroit, Michigan, being freeze-dried and restored by a company that does that. I didn't know that was even a thing that takes place. Security personnel had to go in and retrieve laptops and equipment to make sure confidential information was secured. The court system has had to respond to the destruction and the loss of the building and set up temporary facilities for court proceedings, for court records to be filed. In fact, for a time, those of you that are not lawyers may not appreciate this, but I know Senator Webb and others will. Timelines and deadlines are pretty important when you're filing things. Senator West, you're familiar with that, and Senator Stivers. They actually shut off and stopped the clock, so to speak, in Graves County because there was no way to file anything. Everything has now been turned back on by order of the Supreme Court. In fact, they resumed operations, I believe, yesterday or the day before. Again, in temporary facilities, there are going to be costs for those temporary facilities to establish those that are going to last for the next 2 or 3 or 4 years. And then there's going to be an $18 or $19 million price tag for a whole new building to put all those people back in place. And that's just in Mayfield, just in Graves County. And you heard Senator Embry talk about the tragic loss of one of the court system's own, and Judge Brian Crick in Muhlenberg County, who represents that district or served that district and has been since 2011. He left behind his wife Amanda and their 3 children. The loss and the devastation is tremendous. I'm grateful for your support of Senate Bill 5, and I look forward to seeing it pass so that we can help the people in West Kentucky recover now and in the years ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. And, Senator Wise, you want to?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Max Wise, State Senator, 16th Senate District. If you look at the geography, the demographics of the map of Kentucky, you'll notice that Taylor County is not West Kentucky. Taylor County is not even considered to be West Kentucky, but we were tragically hit as well on the storm damage that happened. We're the farthest eastern county that suffered one casualty that day, losing 74 homes that were destroyed or uninhabitable, affecting numerous families, and especially in the agriculture sector. When you look at the storm damage that came through, it was in the northern portion of Taylor County, very close to the Marion County line. And if that had hit about 3 to 5 miles south, and I know Senator Givens is familiar with the Taylor County area, that would have came right through Campbellsville University, the downtown Campbellsville area. But I appreciate being able to be a co-sponsor on this, and I appreciate all the work that's being done with this legislation, and including also Taylor County, because there's been times when people have asked me about relief of things that has been put forth, and they see Western Kentucky and just making sure that Taylor County is still included. And I'm glad to be a part of that because this was a hit to numerous counties, and seeing that storm damage that started west, and as it made its way, Taylor was probably the last area that it was hit, and hit substantially. I appreciate what's in this bill as it relates to education, and as the Education Committee Chairman, of $30 million that is going to be given to the Kentucky Department of Education as it relates to those wraparound services for students, after-school tutoring, providing educational opportunities for transportation costs, because many of these students, once again, we're talking about homes to be able to get from here and to there, that it still gives for that. Mental health counseling, which we know many families are going to need with this. As I mentioned, we had one casualty just in Taylor County, but we know there is more as you get into Warren and then farther into Western Kentucky. So I appreciate the work that was put into this bill. I appreciate being a co-sponsor of this bill. Mr. Chairman, thank you this morning for allowing me to testify.
You're very welcome, sir. And to the whole of the Western Kentucky, Senator Wilson, come on up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee for this bill, and thank you for sponsoring and allowing me to be a co-sponsor on it. Bowling Green was hit very hard. I was in the 94 ice storm. We were without power for 5 days. I never will forget that. I was in the hailstorm in 98 where hailstones were as big as softballs, and I kid you not. And the damage was tremendous. But what we faced in Bowling Green, like I've never seen, is the tremendous loss of life, of families that were, you drive by Whispering Hills and it's just houses obliterated. And one family, they found the bodies many different places and didn't find the 14-year-old till days after, and she was in a tree somewhere. And it's just, when you drive through there, and our home, we're in the South County, not even a leaf was disturbed, but you go through and the bypass downtown in Bowling Green was closed off. You just couldn't get there. Bowling Green's Tree USA, one of those cities too as well. And there are countless trees, huge trees, just snapped off, uprooted. And the debris that has to be picked up, and FEMA's on the ground down there. It's just incredible. But I appreciate this fund and the set aside of this fund of $200 million, and the fact that $48 million of it's being appropriated now. But what will happen, I know, is that we will be in regular contact with our mayors, with our judge executives, and our emergency management folks to find out what the immediate needs are. This takes care of immediate needs. And a lot of it is reimbursable through FEMA. So that's the nice part about it. But it creates that so that we are ready to respond, and we have responded quickly. So I appreciate everyone's support on this. I appreciate the bill, and I appreciate all the outpouring of support that we have had from the numerous communities around the state as well as outside of the state. So I just wanted to wrap it up and just say thank you, as all of my colleagues have done, and I appreciate it so very, very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. And to the whole of the Western Kentucky delegation that's here, we've had an interesting process as the bill has advanced, and I know the governor's yet to sign redistricting, but in essence, the people you represent down there has shifted dramatically due to the population shift. But nobody has done anything that's anything but seamless. So to you guys in the work that you've put in, it's amazing. Thank you. Also have to appreciate working directly with the governor's office on this. You know, much like in an emergency situation where the first responders have to execute a triage operation, finance is much the same, where there's NGE authority for the governor to handle the stuff that has to be done right now. And then what you see us doing here is exactly what the governor asked for, which is begin to address those next up concerns that are very important, right? Housing, getting kids to and from school, getting them the wraparound services they need. And then the balance of this money, which is what the governor had requested in a call with us, is for those longer term issues that we will continue to have hearings about to make sure that we apply them in ways that does not violate anything from FEMA. And also, quite frankly, you know, I will never forget when I first showed up here in the General Assembly, we were just beginning to deal with the federal trials that resulted from the tornado cleanup in West Liberty. And, you know, trying to make sure that we have appropriate controls so we don't see those same things again from folks who are unscrupulous actors, that we're spending the taxpayer dollars wisely. So as we go about that triage effort, I also want to thank the governor's office for their input into the situation and their actions, and we appreciate being able to execute those actions that he has asked for in a responsible way to ensure that we're providing additional oversight to those dollars. With that, I have Senator Givens. You want to go next?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think you touched on a lot of the key points I wanted to make regarding conversations that we in leadership have had with the governor's office that you were involved in, and the immediate need, the allocation of monies being there in this fund that we're creating, the $200 million deposit into that fund, and the immediate expenditure of $45 million broken into the $15 million and the $30 million. I'd like to ask Leader Wilson to come back to the table for just a moment, though, because there was a very important conversation. I think part of what we're doing here today is policy forward, but I think and hope the other part of what we're doing here is communicating as clearly as we can to people that are in crisis. The needs are so real. All of you have spoken eloquently about the devastation, the human tragedy, and also the immediate need. In so doing, I think we need to communicate as clearly as we can, and because it was a conversation that you and I and some others had, very specifically as you were speaking passionately about the destruction in Bowling Green and Warren County on that call with the governor that we had, you raised the case of, Governor, 200 displaced families that we're going to be able to get temporary FEMA housing for doesn't even start to scratch the surface in Warren County.
Yes, sir.
But there are very restrictive, and understandably so, constraints that FEMA puts on temporary housing. If you can recall for the committee and those that may be listening about those constraints and why they may not apply in a devastated community like yours, but they do apply in Dawson Springs and other areas.
You know, I honestly, that part of the conversation, I don't remember the restrictions that you're speaking about. But
I'll help you because it struck both you and I the same way in sort of a light bulb moment. So FEMA does an evaluation of the community, discovers the number of families that are in need of housing, and then looks at available housing. If there are apartment spaces, if there are homes available to rent,
right.
if there are other safe spaces to lodge.
Right.
Now pick up the story from there.
Well, Bowling Green has a significant apartment availability for people to be housed in, but we are housing people in motels and hotels and things of that. Because of the growth of the community, our community is growing so fast they can't build apartments fast enough. So it may look like that we have the housing to house them in, but we really don't. And we are delivering meals 2 times a day, every day. Our churches are stepping up, and I've been involved in that. And these people, they are just putting them where they can. And that is one of the biggest needs that we have is long-term temporary housing for them. As I talked to my judge, he said that was the biggest concern they have right now.
And sadly enough, communities like Warren likely will not qualify based on the FEMA constraints around that.
That's correct.
Now, Mr. Chairman, if I could, latitude for just one more moment. The other thing that I'm so proud that we're doing in this legislation for those storm-demolished areas in West Kentucky, we've had the conversation, Senator Howell, about population loss in the western counties in our beautiful Commonwealth. What we've got to do is prevent this moment where a family that suffered so much looks at the circumstances and says it may be best for us to move. We've got to find a way to delicately and appropriately try to keep that family rooted in that community. And that's what this temporary housing is going to do. As the chairman indicated, getting these schools reopened so that people regain that sense of community is so important. We need to do all we can, and I'm excited by the legislation you're sponsoring that gives us the chance to put these people back into their communities in ways that are sustainable and livable.
Yeah, thank you. That's one of the greatest concerns that our local people have. Mayfield's effect by this storm is well documented, and one of the greatest concerns for the people in Mayfield and for the school system is keeping those people there. Not only have so many of them lost their homes, but a lot of them have lost their jobs as well. So it's very difficult for them to stay anchored in the community. Mayfield and Graves County has done a remarkable job in the last 10 years to kind of stem the tide of population decline in Western Kentucky. They've done a good job with a lot of business development, a lot of business retention, and have really started making the turn, so to speak, toward increasing their local population. And they're very concerned, not just for the school district standpoint, but for the greater community standpoint, that this will set them back or maybe reverse the course. And all the hard work that they've done to build up their community may be undone by all of this. And they're really, really focused on getting these people that have been located back in their community. Mr. Chairman, one other thing, please. Senator Carroll from Marshall County is under the weather today. He regrets that he couldn't be here. His county was affected as well. It went east to west through his county like it did a lot of mine as well. But he wanted to let you know that he fully supports this legislation and wishes he could be here to speak directly to you.
Good deal. Thank you. Senator West.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Givens has already asked most of my question, but just to keep going on the same line, and anybody can answer this question who may know the answer. We had some recent flooding in Carlisle, Kentucky, which is just above me in my district, and it was horrendous, and we had this problem there. The key to temporary housing is the speed. You know, how quickly can you get that set up? Is there this $15 million, can it be allocated immediately? Or do we have to wait on a FEMA designation or a FEMA sign-off of any sort? Do you know?
I haven't spoken directly with FEMA on the timing of this. Senator Givens, I don't know. I know you were on that call some, but nothing ever happens as fast as you need it to in the moment. Having the funding allocated, it's my understanding, provides that first step to be able to do this. As for an actual number of days or weeks that we're talking about, I don't know that we've been given any sort of heads up on timing for that.
Very well. I've got them stacking up here, so we're going to have to hustle through. Senator Givens is going to respond first.
I'll respond briefly, Mr. Chairman, to Senator West's question, a very valid question. From the communications with the governor and the conversations that we've had in leadership with the executive branch, the indication is the trailers are on the verge of being ready, and these are going to be, instead of a mobile home, these are going to be resellable trailers, because apparently the market value, and FEMA has experienced this in Louisiana and Texas in similar situations, buying a mobile trailer as opposed to a mobile home has resale value. It also doesn't result in someone taking root in that trailer and us proliferating trailers across the community. In addition, the 200 that are going to be purchased are going to be, as I understand it, approximately $10 million in cost. The other $5 million is going to be for the infrastructure, for the hookups, the pads, connections to the sewer system. I think it's well thought out. I sense that the governor and the disaster emergency response folks have a great plan based on at least the information we've received to date. And Senator West, I think this can happen relatively quickly once these monies are expended, and it does have an emergency in the title.
All right, we've got two more. I'm going to go to Senator Meredith next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And certainly the devastation from this storm was unprecedented, but what wasn't unprecedented is the outreaching of support from people throughout the state. It truly has been heartwarming. This is Kentucky at its very best, and we need to remember that going forward. But, Mr. Chair, I know we're rushed for time, but just want to follow up on your point of personal privilege earlier. Your kind remarks about my friend C.B. Embry. We've known each other a lot of years, and he used to be my state representative and frequent visitor to my hospital when I was CEO, Twin Lakes Regional Medical Center. He truly was a legend in Grayson County when he was our representative. But, you know, whatever success we have achieved in Frankfort, it's in a large measure for those who are willing to stand by us and support us. And I think we'd be remiss if we didn't acknowledge his life partner, Wanda Emery. She's been to many committee meetings as anybody here, and God bless her. It takes a special person to do that, but just wanted to know how special she is to all of us, and she's as much of our caucus as anyone here, but just want to appreciate her dedication to her husband, and what an example both of them have been to all of us for working on 60 years of marriage, and just a great couple. And I know CB would acknowledge that he's where he is because of his wife, Wanda. So again, just want to commend Wanda for being part of this relationship and being part of our family. Thank you.
All right, and last word is going to go to Senator Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and amen to Senator Meredith's eloquent acknowledgement. You know, I was in Little Rock, Arkansas the night this happened at the governor's mansion, and we were kind of tracking this storm, and Jonesboro was hit first. And I got a call from Memphis checking on me, and I stayed up all night monitoring it in that TB Market area, got no sleep. My heart was with you all. It was just devastating, and flashbacks to West Liberty, when I was on the ground there right after it happened, our neighbors, and we share that court jurisdiction. So, and I couldn't help but think about the Mayfield Justice Center, you know, when they built it, and all the people impacted. Checked on former Representative Nestler and others, and any friends I had down in that area. Reached out to some of y'all. Came back through Bowling Green, and it was just heart-wrenching. So I feel like I went through that somewhat with you all, and I'm very proud that the Kentucky Bar Association, there's some discussion of lawyers earlier, but they're taking volunteers to help folks. So if any of my brothers and sisters are out there and they want to do some real good pro bono work, there's a great need. But the bill drafter and me, Mr. Chairman, I think we need a technical correction. On page 3, line 6, where it says an eligible recipient may receive, strike the word tornadoes and insert. Okay, did we change? Oh, in the sub? Okay, sorry, I had Zoom court this morning and was late, but I'm still on it. Thank you.
Very well. Thank you, Senator. Appreciate your diligence, and as always. Okay, at this time, we're going to cut the discussion off. The chair will entertain a motion on Senate Bill 5 as amended by Senate Committee Substitute 1, as amended by Voice Amendment 1 in the committee today. By Senator Caslin, second by Senator Nemes. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Carroll. Senator Caslin.
I'd like to explain my aye vote.
Cast your vote and explain, sir.
I want to thank the delegation for this piece of legislation, and the city of Bremen is on the county line of my district, and C.B. Embry and I share that county line there, and I had the opportunity to spend a few days down there running a track hoe, and I just want to take a moment to just talk about the volunteers. I mean, we had an opportunity to show the nation what the fabric of America looks like. With this tornado and the devastation it brought, I sat there that day in that cab of that excavator and just watched people walking down the streets giving out Chick-fil-A sandwiches, bottles of water, people that didn't know one another, just embracing and hugging those who had lost their home. I met a lady who didn't even have a toothbrush, completely had lost it all. And just getting to see that many people come together and love on their neighbor and care for one another was one of the greatest things. And these folks were farmers. There were people who owned dump trucks and skid steers and a chainsaw and just brought down what they had to be able to help somebody else out. And so I wanted to say thank you to those volunteers for this, and what a great piece of legislation to continue to help those in need. Thank you.
Senator Douglas.
Aye.
Senator Givens. Aye. Senator Kerr. Senator McGarvey, Senator Meredith, Senator Nemus,
Aye.
Senator Webb, Senator West, Chairman McDaniel.
Aye. There being 9 aye votes, no nay votes, the measure advances to the floor. Gentlemen, thank you again for your effort.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
All right, very well. All right. Next up, we have Senate Bill 48, which I have sponsored. I believe that President Stivers wants to speak on as well. Senate Bill 48, very simply, directs the Cabinet via Commonwealth seed to recover the $15 million that had been appropriated to what was originally Brady Industries by the end of this year, and if not, to go ahead and initiate litigation therein. I want to be very clear before the President begins his remark that I don't want the Commonwealth to get $15 million. I want Ashland to get an aluminum mill. I think that's what we've all wanted. But unfortunately, I think the feelings of frustration and promises that have proven not to be true has reached a boiling point, and I think it is time to begin to apply additional levels of pressure, hence the reason for this legislation today. And Mr. President, with that, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm going to encourage the committee to pass this, and then it will be in the Rules Committee's possession. As you, Mr. Chairman, have said, we want to see everybody, including, I'm certain, the senator from Carter wants to see this happen. There's a couple of things I want to explain to the committee. In my role as the Senate President and the President Pro Tem, we've had some individuals reach out to us. Much like the Ford deal, I have signed an NDA. There has been one tender to the Pro Tem. I have been briefed on certain issues, and I feel good about the track that this is going. But because of COVID, and I think everybody who was here, including the senator from Carter, knew that there had to be a boil lanced from this process, and it has been done. So I think the easy and most expeditious way to do this, so that we can have assurance that this will move forward, and I have been given assurances and that it is moving forward, but because of NDAs and because of Security Exchange Commission disclosures, there's a lot of things that can't be discussed. So I think it's appropriate that this move forward, but we will continue to do our due diligence and leadership to sit down and meet with the respective people that are involved, and that's my commitment to them. And what you and I have talked about, the President Pro Tem has talked about our commitment to the state to make sure everything is appropriately done. So I think there is still a really good opportunity, but it is our duty to make sure everything is moving forward, and this bill will continue to keep that type of focus on it. But in the long run, I think this will happen.
Thank you, Mr. President. First up is Senator West.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is one of those questions that I'm going to ask that, as lawyers, we're supposed to a lot of times know the answers to the questions before we ask them. But is there an emergency clause on this bill?
Nope.
Okay. So if we pass this off the floor, if it passes out of the legislature, when would it go into effect?
90 days after the close of the session.
Yeah. And so I see within here we've got, and even after that, the recovery, they've got until December 31st of 2022 to complete recovery. So I make those points to say, if there's a pending agreement with investors, or if they've got something going on where this deal can be salvaged, there's plenty of time, even if we pass this out of committee. We've got until the end of session. We've got until implementation, because there's not an emergency clause. And then as I read it, there's even further discretion to December 31st, 2022. Is that fair? Correct?
I think that is, and I'm really, because I have sat down with some of the people involved and have been given information that I have agreed not to disclose, but there are things that are actually happening this week. But again, we need to make sure the focus stays on this project.
Thank you. Senator Webb.
Thank you, and I want to thank the Senate President for appearing here today and relieving some of my sleepless nights because this project, I've remained a cautious optimist in this project, and I still do. I've been interviewed by the press this week. I too have had discussions with individuals trying their best. I still have faith in the investors that some of them I've known and watched for many years that have real skin in this game. And I'm hopeful that we can get something in my district for this, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your accommodations and this committee's accommodations throughout. And I'm satisfied with the no emergency clause and the timeline that's here. And I think the fiscal part of me certainly would like to have the money back if there is no chance that this project comes to fruition. So I appreciate everybody working on this. And again, I'm breathing a lot easier, and I'm still optimistic that our district's going to have a benefit. So thank you.
Senator Meredith.
Thank you, President Stivers, for that update. It is reassuring, and I think this is one of the rare situations that we're all on the same page for the most part. We want to see results, and I think we took a real leap of faith back in 2017 when we approved this expenditure, and the same as we took a leap of faith when we did the battery plant in Hardin County. But I think it's a courtesy we extended to Governor Bevin and certainly extended to Governor Beshear. So I think it is time to recover this money. Only concern I have, and it may not be a strong concern, but if I were an investor, to see that this March 31st date to 2022, does that cause the investors to be a little bit squeamish? Wouldn't it make sense to make that date consistent with the date that the law would go in effect? It's kind of splitting hairs here, but again, just from an investor's standpoint, that would make me just a little bit squeamish. But to me, it's kind of meaningless if the bill doesn't go into effect until after July anyway. So would it make sense to make the date of this effective with the date that the law becomes effective?
And certainly, Senator, I wouldn't oppose an amendment like that at all. I think that there are a number of options that if this is really not just more false hope peddled upon the citizens, to change and accommodate and allow for some flexibility for real investors to do those things, and not just a date change. So I think that there's a lot of flexibility, but to the same end, I think that everybody needs to know the serious nature of what it is that we're asking. So yeah, absolutely.
Great, thank you.
Senator Kesslin.
Kind of a question / comment, and Senate President, not to put you on the spot, but you might be able to help answer this with your institutional knowledge. So, I never have been a huge fan of even public-private partnerships because we're spending the taxpayers' money in the private sector. But when we look at this here, is this particular loan for this $15 million, is it a forgivable loan, or is it a loan to be paid back with interest?
Senator Castlin, I was in the room when this was first brought up in 2017, in the last hours of the session. We went through, I think, Commonwealth Seed Capital, I think is the name of the entity, and modified the statutes. To the extent of forgivable or not, I think it is something that may be forgivable based on delivery. But if there is not delivery, it is recoupable, or better known as a clawback. That is my recollection.
And the reason I asked that is because I was wondering if it was statutory or through the regulations, because my question is, do we already have the ability to claw back this if they have a certain date that they haven't met their obligation?
Yes. As in their terms of the deal, the governor's office could, as of March 31st, recover this money.
Of 2021 or as of
22.
2022? Okay, so let me ask another question. This piece of legislation, because when we vote on this, the same way I was a freshman when we voted on this, and I was one of two in the House who didn't vote for this because we didn't know any information on it. And I asked this question because I don't want to cast another vote being in the dark whenever it's dealing with $15 million of my constituents' money. And so a question is this expediting that process or guaranteeing that it has to be done and not giving the ability to the governor to claw it back?
I believe that the governor would still have his abilities under this. This just ensures that if it runs through the end of this calendar year, at that point, they have to do it. Okay. So that it doesn't stop them from doing it sooner.
And I agree with your opening statement. We want to see an aluminum mill in this portion of eastern Kentucky because of the amount of economic growth and jobs it brings. But I think it also needs to bring awareness to everybody on this committee and in the General Assembly that we need to make sure that we have good language around when we're loaning the taxpayers money, because I wonder if there's other projects in the past across Kentucky that we've given economic development money that never come to fruition. You read about all these ribbon cuttings whenever it comes to election time for elected officials, and then you drive down the road and you don't see anything happen. I know Senator Givens, I think there's one in Greene County that's going on like that right now. And so I support this measure because I want to be able to recoup the money if we need to, but I hope the aluminum mill can work it out and build their infrastructure.
Right. And to answer your question directly, Senator Caslin, the company has long been in violation of statute. The cabinet has allowed them to be in violation of statute via side letters, which I really don't know exactly how the executive branch does that, but that's what they've done. This prohibits further side letters to allow those extensions.
And if I could address this, if you look at the economic development statutes, there's a couple of different ways it can be done. You can front money, and if they don't produce, claw it back, or you can put up criteria that when they hit certain points of success, and it may be in total investment, it may be in total number of jobs, that then they get to get the incentives incrementally or depending on how the deal is set up. Much like the Ford deal that we just approved, those sometimes are spread over 20 years, but we came back to the present value because Ford, and if they go in and do that investment, then they get the present value of what a 20-year incentive plan is, because part of that can be, because it's a whole series of different things, it can be recoupment of the income tax generated by the new jobs. And so depending on how they fashion it, depends on what remedies you may have for non-performance. But in this situation, I, applaud the chair for what he's done, and I think that has created a dynamic where we are getting better information, and with that information, there is what I think a greater likelihood of success than what we knew. But that is still to be seen.
All right, very well. At this time, the chair will entertain a motion. Senator McGarvey, do I have a second? Senator West. Thank you. Mr. Secretary, please call a roll.
Senator Carroll. Senator Caslin.
Explain my aye vote.
Cast and explain, sir.
I'm going to cast an aye vote today within hopes that when it moves to the Rules Committee that our leadership and chairman will continue to have these conversations, because we don't want to send a message across the Commonwealth that Kentucky's not for economic growth. But at the same time, we also need to send a message that when we loan you $15 million, we expect to see results in a timely manner.
Senator Douglas.
I'd like to cast my vote and then explain.
Cast and explain, sir.
Today I'll also cast an aye vote, and this is difficult for me, but for the same reasons that Senator Caslin has explained. I really want leadership to continue to explore this. I think it's really, really important, as he said, that when we make promises to people, we can hold them to the promises that they make to us. And when they make those promises to us, they are making them to the taxpayers and the people we represent. And we need to make sure that the people we represent know that they can trust us. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Givens.
Aye.
Senator Kerr. Senator McGarvey. Aye. Senator Meredith.
Cast my vote and explain, please.
Cast and explain, sir.
Certainly, I'm voting aye on this, but would like to follow up with you and Senator Stivers regarding a possible floor amendment to talk about the dates. Not a big deal issue with me, but would like to do that. Thank you.
Senator Nemus.
Aye.
Senator Webb.
I'm gonna vote and explain. I'm gonna vote aye with all the accommodations that are in here in the time frame. And you know what Senator Caslin said. It's been a historic issue with getting information. Sometimes with economic development and all the layers of secrecy that even the president has alluded to somewhat. But certainly, you know, this body is the appropriating body, and I've said this throughout my tenure. We deserve information on which to base these decisions, notwithstanding any business investment, whether it's private or public. You're going to have failures and things happen and anomalies and global issues and all those things. So, you know, there's going to be some failures with any investment. But I'm voting aye today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator West.
I'd like to cast my vote and explain.
Cast and explain, sir.
I vote aye today to move this bill along, but I reserve the right to change my vote on the floor. Hearing some pretty good information, but if we hear some good, hard information in the next couple weeks on a change, I'm prepared to change my vote to a no on the floor.
Very well.
Chair McDaniel.
And cast my vote and explain as well. Mr. President, thank you for your support of the measure today, and certainly, as has been echoed, what we want is an aluminum mill, not $15 million. But our confidence has been greatly eroded. I think we're willing to have some patience through the course of session, but I don't know that patience will necessarily extend till April the 15th. So I'm optimistic that representatives of this company will more directly engage with the public and with the General Assembly and present us something that gives us good news, but more importantly, gives the citizens of Ashland and its surrounding communities some good news. So I cast an aye vote. There being 9 aye votes, no nay votes, the measure does pass on to the floor. Any other business to come before the committee? Seeing none, we'll stand adjourned.